Welcome to Alan Skorsky Reports. I'm Alan Skorsky. We are now one full week into the Trump administration, and already the shockwaves can be felt across the world, especially in Israel, where the early release of hostages has begun. President Trump has canceled all funding for UNRWA, and the U.S. Congress has issued sanctions against the ICC after that body issued arrest warrants for Bibi Netanyahu, Yoav Gallant, and Israeli soldiers visiting foreign countries like Brazil recently have had to escape under fear of being arrested. This week, the Senate will vote on the Illegitimate Court Counteraction Act, a critical bill to protect Israel from the politically biased actions of the ICC. Today's guest, Nitsana Darshan-Leitner, founder and president of the Shurat HaDin Law Center in Israel, recently filed a lawsuit against UNRWA on behalf of the family of Yonatan Samerano, hope I'm pronouncing the name correctly, whose body is still being held by Hamas in Gaza. According to intelligence reports, Yonatan's body was taken by Faisal Ali Mussalem al-Naami, hope I'm pronouncing his name incorrectly, a Hamas terrorist who was employed by UNRWA in Gaza's Nuseirat camp. And in a few moments, we'll talk about that lawsuit, in addition to Shurat HaDin's work to fight against the ICC. Just a little background about Shurat HaDin. Their law center is a leading international legal fight to stop terror financing, combating sanctions and boycotts against Israel, and working to defeat lawfare attacks against the IDF. She is the co-author of the bestseller Harpoon, which recounts Shurat HaDin's work with the Mossad to wage financial warfare against Israel's terrorist enemies. She was recently also named by the Jerusalem Post as one of the 50 most influential Jews in the world for 5 years in a row. Nitsana, thank you so much for joining us today, especially because we know it's late in Israel. So welcome to the show.
Always pleasure to talk to you.
Okay, so first I want to begin with your lawsuit against UNRWA. According to an article in Israel Hayom, it says that you are going to make the case that since that UNRWA cannot qualify for immunity because they don't have permanent status, they are temporary, and therefore they are subject to lawsuits. So my first question is, if you can get this accomplished, besides suing UNRWA now on behalf of the Samerano family, does this now make UNRWA liable, and they can be sued for their role in all of the hostages and not just this family that you're representing?
Wow, it's a great question. So basically, we did file a lawsuit against UNRWA on behalf of someone that was kidnapped. Yonatan Samerano was kidnapped by UNRWA's officials. And we have the proof, we have the video. It's easy to prove liability on UNRWA. The obstacle in this lawsuit is UNRWA's immunity. We claim that in this specific case, UNRWA should not enjoy any immunity because they were acting act of terrorism, and terrorism is not defensible according to the UN treaty. When a UN organization is acting wrongly from the UN treaty, there is no reason to hide behind the immunity defense. And I hope that the Attorney General of Israel will come forward and side with us and say UNRWA doesn't have immunity. If UNRWA is stripped from its immunity, it does open the door to flood of lawsuits against it. The issue is just to prove that UNRWA assisted in each and every incident and therefore is responsible and have liability. That will be a little bit hard in some cases, but easy in others. We have other employees of UNRWA that participated in the massacre. We have UNRWA facilities that hide launchers and missiles and rockets. It's a court of law. The plaintiffs will have to show the evidence, but I'm sure UNRWA can be found responsible and liable for many, many incidents and pay a lot of money for siding with Hamas and participating in the war against Israel.
So that's what we're all hoping for. And as I mentioned in the monologue, President Trump has he stripped all funding for UNRWA. I'm just wondering, just to go off on a tangent a little bit, besides UNRWA, there are other so-called humanitarian aid groups working in Gaza. I don't know if you're going after any of them, but for example, Doctors Without Borders, I remember watching an interview and I heard a doctor, and she was from the West, and I heard her pronounce Gaza, Chaza. That's how they pronounce it in Gaza. And immediately hit to me, this is not just some parv doctor who's there. This is somebody who is invested in Gaza. And I am absolutely convinced that all these groups, Doctors Without Borders, and you have the World Central Kitchen also, they're in Gaza purposely to provide sanctuary and to protect and insulate Hamas. Because people, I understand humanitarian groups, they go to Haiti, they go to other third world countries to help people. But when you're going into Gaza, an area dominated by Hamas that has at least 75% of the support of the people, and when UNRWA, their education is indoctrinating these kids, I don't want to hear anymore that Gaza is full of innocent people and it's just a small group of people who are elected and they control it. Anyone who is there, and they have a purpose there.
Right. Alan, you're right. On October 7th, residents of Gaza cheered to accept the hostages, cheered for Hamas atrocities, threw candies and were yelling from happiness about what Hamas terrorists did. They actually participated themselves in the massacre. When Hamas invaded Israel, they did it in 3 waves. The first one was the Nukhba terrorists, the elite commando unit of the Hamas. The second one was the regular terrorists of Hamas. But the third wave was the residents of Gaza that heard on the mosque and on the streets that there is an opportunity to invade into Israel and massacre Jews. So they all came in masses, by truck, by foot, by bicycle, and they butchered people and raped women and burned people alive. So obviously there is not innocent people in Gaza. We all know that. But let's separate. When you take someone to court, you have to prove that he is really responsible and liable. You can't take the whole Gaza Strip into court, although, as we said before, they're all responsible. They all share the same goals. They all share the same tactics. They're all Hamas, no question about it. When it comes to court of law, you need the strict evidence. If you find an organization that participated in the massacre, that helped Hamas and all that, you can bring it to court. So this is what we did with UNRWA. This is what we did with the Red Cross, not for participating with Hamas, but ignoring the hostages, for instance, that were needed so much, the medicine. We take them to court. I'll tell you which other organization we took to court for helping Hamas. This is SJP, Students for Justice in Palestine.
Yep.
Now they were not in Gaza. They did not come to Israel, but they are aiding and abetting Hamas. They are a front of the organization that spreads the propaganda of Hamas. They spread the ideology of Hamas, share the same tactics of Hamas, intimidation, terrorism, and they share the same goals of Hamas. When they call from the river to the sea, they are not these useful idiots that don't know what the river is and where is the sea. They know exactly what they want to do to eliminate the Jewish state, to kill all the Jews. So this is an organization that is being sued by us in the United States for aiding and abetting Hamas.
Well, that's fantastic, because then it brings me to another issue then. One of President Trump's many promises was that he was going to deport all students who are here on foreign visas. Now, again, there are SJP students who are American and they can't be deported, but those who are here from abroad, they can be deported. And you know that he's got a killer team in place here. So, which now brings me to another question.
We approached, to deport these students from United States. Once their visa is revoked, they have no reason to stay here, no right to stay here.
So
they
I know that
America and destroy America. I'm not talking about Israel. I'm talking also about the United States. Hate America, death to America. There should be zero tolerance to such calls and such ideology on the campuses and elsewhere, and they should be thrown out of America.
So right now, everything you're saying leads me to ask many more questions, and I'll give you another perfect example. Memory. Middle East Media Research Institute. They
Yes.
document everything. So one of the questions I'm going to have is, why aren't we using them more effectively? But I'll come back to them later. But if I had a nickel for every imam in America calling for death to America and spreading anti-Semitism, not anti-Zionism, but the Jews. When we had the massacre in New Orleans not that long ago, I said, you watch. I guarantee you this guy came from a mosque where the imam is a preacher of hate. And sure enough, I was right.
Yeah. The problem with these speeches is, as you know, they are protected by freedom of speech. Although it's incitement, it doesn't come up to an imminent and clear danger that really push people to go and kill. The example of New Orleans, you still have to prove. I agree with you, but it needs really to be shown that the murderer went to the mosque, heard the speech of the imam that day or the day before, was incited and went to kill. It's possible, but it needs to be proved. But you're right, all these calls from all these mosques, from all the imams, incite and cause anti-Semitism, anti-American, and they should be taken down, simply taken down.
Correct. You recently put out a statement, 5 things that we need to know about the hostage deal. The first one, of course, the point one was that it's a very unfair deal. That's something we all know, that we're getting back a handful of hostages. We're releasing 1,000 murderers. I already know about the Bibas family, because if Kfir was still alive, they would have made videos as propaganda. I don't want to think about it. When it's going to come out, it's going to come out. Yeah. You spoke and you made a number of other points, and that Donald Trump has to be very much aware, because now he's going to be managing a deal that was initially brought by Joe Biden. And to me, I laugh when Joe Biden is bragging about this deal. I'm thinking, how out of touch are you? This is not a deal to be bragging about. We're stuck with it. But now so the best deal would have been, we get back all of our hostages unconditionally, and Hamas either surrenders or they go to another country. And there was no other deal. Right. But that didn't happen. Right. So right now, there are a lot of people who are angry at Steve Witkoff. I wasn't at the meeting. I don't know what he told Bibi. I have no idea. He said, listen, we need this because President Trump said, oh, hell, we'll pay, give us something and we'll help you later. I don't know what happened, but it's not great. And for the families who got their loved ones back, I'm happy for them. But right now, this is what's on the table. So in your best case scenario, what is the best plan B, since plan A did not happen?
You know, the deal has a second stage. After the release of the 33 hostages, supposedly there should be another deal where, be surprised, Hamas leaves peacefully the Gaza Strip and release all the hostages. If you believe that will happen, good for you. We all agree that there is no chance Hamas is leaving the Strip. And then Israel will have to face a very hard decision whether to go back to Gaza and finish the job and eliminate Hamas. Now, we saw that in the course of a year and 4 months, Israel was not able to destroy Hamas. I believe that it was a result of restraints from the Biden administration, that we could not go and use all our force strongly and determinedly against Hamas. We were limited by explosives. We were embargoed, in a sense, from the Biden administration. We were forced to bring tons of humanitarian aid, of food that was captured by Hamas, utilized by Hamas, and they sold it to the poor people and used the money to recruit more terrorists and manufacture more arms and keep their control on the Gaza Strip. So basically, and we also had the hostages in the tunnels, and we are afraid to go full force. If Trump will keep its promise that Hamas will no longer remain as a force in the Gaza Strip, and Israel will have the freedom to go back to Gaza, he must allow Israel now to crush Hamas, to crush Gaza completely. And I'm afraid that it may not happen now when we see all the millions of people coming back from the south part of the strip to the north. Israel will have to go back to clear out the north again. It will be, all over again. So the same way, this is the second plan, the same way Trump was able to force the parties to reach a hostage release deal, which wasn't so great for Israel, and I'm sure wasn't so great for Hamas, but he was able to pressure Hamas by putting pressure on Qatar and Egypt. He will do the same thing with the second stage, force Hamas to leave the Gaza Strip, isolate Hamas from Qatar, from Egypt, totally alienate them, totally sanction them in a way that they will not be able to stay in the Gaza Strip. And along with the Hamas terrorists, Trump should encourage many of the residents of Gaza to live with Hamas. And then hopefully we'll have our hostages released as well, or at least we'll be able to find them. If this will not work, unfortunately, Israel will not have a choice but to go back to Gaza. We took it into consideration when we signed this hostage release deal. We knew that we will have to pay in blood, not only the blood of the victims, God forbid, that will be killed in the future because of this massive release of prisoners, of terrorists with blood on their hands, but also, God forbid, with the risk of life of our soldiers that now will have to go back into the Gaza Strip and do again what they did in the past year and 4 months.
Well, let me ask you a few more questions. You recently were asked about, or you gave guidance to soldiers who are going abroad because of the ICC and the potential for arrest. And one of the things you said was that Israeli soldiers should stop posting pictures of themselves on social media. Okay. But in this article, though, there were two Arab groups, because you wonder, how did the governments know that they were there? So there are a couple of Arab groups. One is called HRF, or Hind Rajab Foundation, and then Dawn, which is Democracy for the Arab World. And they submit the troops. Leaving them aside, we have groups, again, and they've been very effective, unfortunately. You've had Israeli Chayalim having to run out at 5 a.m. And this
Right.
brings me back to, I can't add that the failure of our groups in America and just Jewish groups to respond in kind or even hit back harder. I mentioned earlier, we have Memory, we have Palestinian Media Watch. Between these two groups alone, this should be done. There should be no talk of two-state solution. That we have all the evidence that we need on the planet. Why are we not using them effectively the way Arab groups are using their activists effectively?
Look, we do use the information provided from Memory, from PMW, from everybody that show how the Palestinians are terrorists, how they're bloodthirsty monsters, and how they're killing Jews and babies and slaughtering people in their sleep. Not only in Gaza, they did it for the past 30 years. In the course of the two intifadas in Israel, the first one, the second one, we all remember the Fogel family, where terrorists from the Popular Front of Liberation of Palestine went into their house and slaughtered a little baby, 3-year-old baby, along with his sisters, brothers, and parents. So this is what the Palestinians do. So we in Shurat HaDin go to the International Criminal Court, utilize this evidence, this information, and bring worker complaints against the leaders of Hamas, the leaders of the Palestinian Authority, the leaders of the PLO. However, the International Criminal Court is a political court, and it's only biased against Israel. and it prefers to bash Israel than take care of the real war criminals. Imagine that the ICC in The Hague will issue arrest warrants against Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and the Defense Minister Yoav Gallant for defending Israel from the atrocity that Hamas committed on October 7th, to bring us to court for committing war crimes, whereas not taking any action against the Hamas terrorists. And why I'm saying they're not taking actions, because some will come and tell me, oh, what are you talking about? At the same time that the ICC issued arrest warrants against Israel, they issued warrants against Mohammed Deif, a terrorist from Hamas, the head of Hamas. So, first of all, Mohammed Deif is dead.
Right.
He's dead. Okay, Hamas did not admit it, but he's no longer alive. So, just to say that, just to even the picture, right, he issues against Mohammed Deif. But furthermore, and more outrageous, we in Shurat HaDin approached the court a day after October 7th. We told the court, you don't have to investigate in order to issue arrest warrants against Mohammed Deif. Yahya Sinwar was alive. Khaled Mashal, Ismail Haniya, all the heads of Hamas. Why? Because the evidence are on the social media, the evidence are in the media, the evidence are, it's videotapes, it's recorded. You don't have even to hold an investigation. You have to issue arrest warrants right now. It took the court more than half a year, more than a year, to go and issue arrest warrants, but not against the Hamas leaders, against Prime Minister Netanyahu and Defense Minister, and just to show that it's not biased, that it's equally investigating the situation, issued useless arrest warrants against the Hamas leaders. Hamas leaders really care about arrest warrants against them in the world. They're hiding in tunnels. They don't raise and put their head beyond the ground. They care about what the ICC is doing. It's only against Israel. And therefore, there is information, there are tools, we utilize these tools, but the courts worldwide are anti-Semitic, working against Israel.
Let me ask you one last question, because I know it's very late in Israel, and I'm so grateful for your time. Back in October, you hosted a great event here in New York City called Rage Against the Hate. And you brought together the top organizations. You brought in speakers like Douglas Murray and Alan Dershowitz. And I like saying Douglas Murray because I love him. So I'm going to say his name 100 times. But and Jabez Kestenbaum and Michael Rappaport, you brought in the top people.
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering, and again, and I know that the function was to get all of us on the same page.
Yeah.
So I'm asking you, because I mean, to me, I think that American Jewish organizations have failed Israel. And so I'm asking you, I know you, if maybe you want to be diplomatic, you don't have to be. What would you say are the greatest failures of American Jewry to help Israel much more effectively? I'll give you one less point. We have the Conference of Presidents of Major Jewish Organizations. They are the umbrella of 50 groups. And I was on there last night looking at it. And yes, we've got the ZOA and we've got, Americans for a Safe Israel, but we also have the ADL and Americans for Peace Now and these reform groups. And to me, and I have no problem calling it, to me, the Jewish left have been just destructive. They have harmed us. They've politicized anti-Semitism. They have harmed Israel in terrible ways. I can go on for an hour about this, but I know, because you are so active and you know everything that's going on, if you had to say where we have failed you, where we have failed Israel and Klal Yisrael, what would you say?
Look, I'm not sure that you can call it a failure, because in the end of the day, all these organizations are trying to do good, to do their best to help Israel. The problem is that they are restrained, or they restrain themselves, and not being zealous enough in the war for Israel. conferences are nice, political gestures are nice, but you have to be more active and more extreme. And Jabotinsky said that you cannot defend the country with one hand tied in the back.
Right.
It's a street fight. And in a street fight, you have to use anything you can, even a broken bottle. This is the war. And you have to come full force and not to be politically correct. I guess a lot of organizations realize that after October 7th, because we see a trend coming in favor of Israel, doing anything they can more than they did before. And this is why we organize this conference in New York to gather all pro-Israeli organizations to work together. Everybody can do a little bit, but if we come full force, we have a power. Really, we can become a powerhouse in the United States, and we need to affect the public opinion. We need to steer the American people to side with Israel. We in Israel are fighting for our life, and we need the entire Jewish community to join us, but we need also the American people to support our fight. We hope with the Trump administration, Israel will turn the corner and we see great miracles here in Israel. We'll win Hamas, we'll win Hezbollah, we'll win the big snake, Iran and others, but we will do it only together. In Hebrew, we say, Beyachad nenatzeach, together we will win.
Nitsana Darshan-Leitner, you're one of my heroes. Thank you for everything that you do. Thank you for joining us. I encourage everyone to read your book, Harpoon. I don't know why it hasn't become a Netflix movie yet. It's one of the most...
Soon to be, hopefully.
Really?
I hope so.
Okay. Yeah. Can I have like a starring role in there or something? Because it's a great book.
I put you on, yeah.
Okay, yay. Okay, so thank you so much. God bless you for all you do, and looking forward to seeing you again.
Thank you very much, Ellen. It was a pleasure.